Coming off a 20-year ski career where I set big goals and methodically spent years chasing them, I had become adept at identifying a target and setting a course to get there. I always knew what I was chasing, why I was chasing it, and the steps I needed to do to get closer to my goal. And this mindset helped me through performance slumps and injuries, helped me have a baby and return to elite competition, and eventually helped my teammates and I win America's first ever gold medal in cross-country skiing. Along the way, I encountered plenty of adversity, but I always seemed to bounce back stronger and sometimes achieve even more than I anticipated. So through all the trials and triumphs, I started to believe that I could take on anything life threw at me and come out successful. In 2018, I decided to retire from sport, and suddenly, I lost my structure. Enter uncertainty. What I hadn't realized was how much I had been relying on the structure that sports provide to get through difficult situations. Whether I was patiently working towards a goal over several years or trying to overcome an injury over a few months, I always had clear benchmarks to follow and a support team all around me. Within a few weeks of finishing my final ski races, however, I felt the loss of no longer having a singular goal that motivated me to wake up and charge every day. For the first time in my life, I had no training program to follow or competitions to measure my progress. The team of people that I had relied on for guidance, encouragement, and support were no longer a part of my daily life. I felt overwhelmed by too many possibilities, and I struggled to hone in on what I wanted my future to be. While sport had been all about clarity, now I was living in the world of ambiguity. It was Mother's Day 2018, just a few months past the glow of winning the Olympic medal. I had moved with my family from Alaska down to British Columbia to start a fresh new chapter. My son was 2 years old, and we were excited to expand our family. It was the most beautiful day, and I remember thinking to myself, life is just incredible right now. So much so that my feet felt like they were hovering off the ground. But then, getting ready for bed that night, I happened to brush past a small hard spot on my breast that I hadn't noticed before. It would take a couple of weeks to do the diagnostic scans and a biopsy, but thinking nothing of it, I headed off to a friend's wedding in Sweden when I got the call from the doctor back home. The test had revealed aggressive cancer, and I was going to need to start treatment right away. My whole world just stopped. Whoosh, my mind went into overdrive. How can this be possible? How can this be real? I am an Olympic gold medalist. I feel fine. I got mad. I felt frustrated. I was in disbelief. And then my mind went to the what ifs and the worst case scenarios. Would I survive this? Would I be around to see my son grow up? The weight of this new revelation was crushing because I had never encountered something that I couldn't just outwork or outwill. Facing cancer, I realized I was going to have little control in the outcome. Everything was uncertain and unknown. As I navigated those first few hours of my new reality, I noticed something happening in the conversation in my head. While one voice wanted to keep looping on all the negative thoughts like a snarled rat's nest, another voice was trying to break through with a simpler message. It's going to be okay. My mind was trying to grasp onto anything it could that was known or within my control. I knew I needed hope, and I needed to focus on taking things one step at a time. Over the next weeks and months through my treatment, as I awaited any sign of an outcome, it became clear to me that our minds can be harnessed as a powerful tool against uncertainty. Relying on structure had helped guide my patience, focus, and confidence in sport. So building structure into my mindset for the battle with cancer was going to be critical to navigating the most challenging experience of my life. But how? How do you do this? When that feeling of control is ripped away and you're confused, incapacitated, and scared, how do you navigate the uncertainty? You start by taking a deep breath. The deep breath is like a reset button that helps bring you back to the present moment. Think of it like turning on a flashlight and shining it around a dark room. At first, it's just a narrow beam of light, but the more you start to shine it around, the more you start to understand the situation. Once you've taken a deep breath, or maybe a few, you can start to sort through all those thoughts swirling around with reckless abandon. Instead of letting yourself get trapped in that inescapable conversation, you can slow down and evaluate the thoughts you're having. Get real about what's true and what's not. Determine what is just a guess or assumption, and challenge yourself to separate what you can control from what you can't. Because as we know, dwelling on what we can't control, as tempting as it is, doesn't really get us anywhere. It's like trying to drive a car without any gas in it. Focusing on what you can control not only helps you move forward, but it helps create a mental roadmap that your mind needs to stay distracted from the unhelpful thoughts and stay focused on action, on those steps you're going to take one at a time to get through this uncertainty. Coming into the 2014 Olympics, I was considered the gold medal favorite in the skate sprint, a position that no American woman had ever been in before. I was 14 years into my career at this point and so ready to go after that medal that I had been dreaming of and working towards my whole career. In the quarterfinals, I was leading the race with 100 meters to go when I ran out of gas and I lost a photo finish by 0.05 of a second. 0.05 of a second, and I am eliminated from the race. As I stood in the finish, I felt tossed into complete chaos. My body felt like it had been bowled over with emotion, like I'd been hit by a semi-truck. My mind was spinning out of control like a hubcap sent wobbling down the road. What ended up helping pull me out of that downward spiral was taking a deep breath, literally taking one step at a time out of the finish area and refocusing on the next race ahead. I had to put my mind on autopilot as much as I could and stay focused on the simple tasks I needed to do. I had brought structure and simplicity back into my mindset, which helped pull me out of the vortex and get me back on track. Now, sorting through your own thoughts to filter out the positive from the negative is definitely not easy, and it's never going to be perfect. But perfection doesn't matter here. With consistent practice and some empathy for ourselves, we can all get better at this. And when you have those tough days and your thoughts slide down into the pit, you take that deep breath, you slow things down, and you start to climb your way back up. And every time you climb out of that hole, you get a little bit stronger. Now, our minds like to jump ahead to future scenarios, despite the fact that they're just guesses and no one knows what the future holds. And for some reason, our minds like to fixate on the worst case scenarios first. I know mine did when I heard the words, "you have cancer." With some deliberate curiosity, however, I was able to break down each of those thoughts until I convinced myself that it was not inevitable that I would become a cancer statistic. I decided to stay focused on hope and the good prognosis. I also decided to distract myself by countering every detriment with something that I might gain through the experience, like gratitude, perspective, and tighter bonds with my loved ones. And I realized it can be really easy to miss the silver linings in a difficult situation if you're not choosing to look for them. Now again, staying focused on those positive thoughts sounds like an easy concept, but it's much more difficult in practice, especially when you're at your mental limit. So if you can think ahead and anticipate times when you may not have the mental strength to stay focused, you can create a mental structure to fall back on should you stumble. Before I started my cancer treatment, I made myself a promise. I was going to do 10 minutes of physical activity every day, no matter how bad I felt. If at the end of 10 minutes I was feeling crummy and depleted, then that was my body's sign to rest. There were many days during my active treatment where I felt pretty miserable laying on the couch. I didn't want to get up, but I stayed committed to my 10-minute goal. Getting up, moving around, and out the door at least distracted me from the discomfort, and sometimes it actually made me feel better. Making the decision about what I was going to do and why before I ever found myself tested in the difficult situation made it a lot easier to deal with the uncertainty because I already had a path to follow. I already had a structure in place. Now, fast forward 5 years, and here I am. My active treatment is in the past. My hair's grown back. And for the most part, cancer has taken a back seat. I was able to get through that hard time and maybe come out better and stronger. But that doesn't mean that life has been easy. It's not easy for any of us. We tend to think of uncertainty and ambiguity as negative states, but I think they can actually be a blessing in disguise. If we can learn to condition our minds to counter that vague and rogue emotion with a calm and collected focus, then that path begins to emerge and we give ourselves the best chance at a positive outcome. We build that mental roadmap. We choose action over assumption, and we believe in hope and possibility. Without pressure, there's no diamonds. So the next time you find yourself feeling out of control, take that deep breath, turn on the flashlight, and remind yourself it's going to be okay. Breathe, evaluate, act. Thank you.